On today's show, here we go, folks. It is the 5th edition of the Locked On Padres Fireside Chat in honor of it being trade deadline day. Going to be talking about the remaining pitchers and relievers and all sorts of trade deadline stuff you need to know heading into this last day of the deadline. Can the Padres pull off one more miracle? We'll have to see, folks. And answering a couple questions about the team going forward. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, July 30th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work over at justbaseball.com, a fantastic website where I write about not just the Padres, but general baseball stuff as well, including a podcast called Baseball versus the World about fun, pop culture-centric, and just silly, ranking uniforms and all that sort of stuff podcast. You could go check that out as well. But if you only want me, that's what you're here for. At @LO_Padres on Twitter for the show account, and at Javapeno, best handle in the game, JAVIIPENO. You might be wondering, if you're watching on the YouTube, why I have my hood up. It's because this is no joke. This ain't no fooling, folks. No malarkey here. It's the 5th ever edition of the Fireside Chats of this Locked On Padres podcast. For those who are unfamiliar with the Fireside Chats, it's basically just my obnoxious way of saying it's the same thing as always. We're going to do an episode today, except it is deadline eve or trade deadline day. That's usually what it means, and this is the final time I'm going to speak to you guys before we get to this deadline, and there's a lot to talk about, and I think I just wanted to express my feelings on the matter, and there's no game recaps, right? We might talk a little bit about the Dodgers series, just looking forward to that, because I think it's going to be a fun 2-game set, just because it's the first team the Padres get to play after the deadline, so that should be a lot of fun. You might see like Jason Adam in that game, so really, really interesting stuff. And without further ado, let's rock and roll with the 5th ever edition of the Fireside Chats. Everybody lock yourselves in. Today's episode is brought to you, though, by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for your first deposit match up to $100. Here's the thing. First, I'm going to take my hood off just a little bit for a second. So let's start with this. I think that overall, my position on the Padres trade line is kind of the same thing that I felt for a while, which is that I don't think that this is a team, that this is a core that you should super overcommit to. So I kind of want to start off this deadline, fireside chat by throwing a little bit of cold water, at least my personal cold water, my opinion on the Padres. I think that there's a lot of really high quality names that people are talking about. I think there's 2. Personally, there are going to be targets, I imagine, that emerge. I mean, if you look at it like this, look, the Padres literally acquired Jason Adam. That was not a player that was necessarily being talked about as much as other players out there on the reliever market. Your Mason Millers, your Yami Garcias, your Carlos Estevez's, right? That wasn't the number one name, maybe because people didn't entirely know how available he was. So maybe there's some other pitchers out there that people don't realize are available instead of the highly talked about ones. So that's an important thing to note. So don't give up based on all the other signings that have happened. Before we get to those other signings, though, and what I think that the Padres should do, my dream scenario, I first want to talk about the 2 top level, in my opinion, starting pitchers that most people have talked about, right? And that's Garrett Crochet and Tarik Skubal. Let's talk about Tarik Skubal first, because I think that he's a lot simpler of a thing to talk about and a lot simpler thing to talk about, especially when it comes to the Padres. Tarik Skubal has been awesome this year. There is no mistake about it. He's a potential Cy Young winner out of Detroit, right? And that's what's so exciting about him. He's been amazing. If you believe in F4, he's got 3.8, which is like tops among all starting pitchers. His strikeout rate is at 30%. Walk rate is only at 4.7%. He doesn't give up homers. He has got a 2.35 ERA, 2.57 FIP. This guy is a monster. Now, here's the thing. I want to start with this. I don't actually personally believe that this guy is available. Now, could he have been available in a previous year? Sure. But I don't actually think that Tarik Skubal is available because I talked about this with Jeff Ellis of Locked On Guardians. I I don't think the Tigers are like crazy off. They just lost Casey Mize for the year, right? I think that Spencer Torkelson has been a little bit of a bust for them, and I don't know if he's just all right. You know what I mean? I don't think that he's necessarily I think he might be in a little bit in his head as a top level prospect who's just really underperformed. Riley Green's been very good for them. Carson Kelly's been good for them. They've had some good players. Kerry Carpenter has been okay for them. I think that they have stuff, and I think that with Skubal, why would you give this guy up, especially when you've been rebuilding for so long and you finally have yourself like a top of the line ace who's young? By the way, that's another part of this. He's 27 years old. Like, it's not like you're giving up some 35-year-old who you don't think is going to be able to match this going forward. So for me, I just feel like the Tigers are somewhat close. Maybe in the offseason they dump the Javier Baez sort of contract, and then they're like, let's go out and get someone different. Maybe that's what they do. They've had a bad stretch of luck. Remember, they also signed Eduardo Rodriguez, and then he left in free agency, so not great for the Tigers lately. So I don't understand why you would give up like one of the very few things that has gone your way. I know that they have a bad record, but they've been rebuilding for so long. I just want to go in that direction, and frankly, I don't think it's real. This is a guy who not only has this year, obviously, for the rest of the year that teams can trade for, but he's got 2 more years. He's only an unrestricted free agent in 2027. So Jason Adams, the Padres got all that club control. I just highly doubt that the Tigers want to give that up, especially with how good he looks. So to me, this is the classic trade deadline red herring where everybody gets excited when it's not really going to happen. And I'm not saying that the reports are false. Let me be very clear. I don't think the reporting's fake or anything like that. I just think that this is the Tigers saying, okay, if we can like fleece a team, right? If we can go to Baltimore, and Baltimore's like, we'll give you Kobe Mayo, we'll give you Jackson Holiday, and we'll throw in Cedric Mullins and whatever, right? Like, they give you a lot of stuff. Maybe that's what they're doing. They're just testing the waters to see if they can get a really big overpay for other positions that they might need more. So I don't believe in that. And even if I did believe that this guy was going to be traded, I'm not into it. You know why? Because for me, hold on one second. I got to look at my phone because something happened. Nothing important to this. But I don't think that the Padres are going to be able to retain any semblance of a farm system if they were able to do this. And I know what you might be thinking, Javi, we don't know what the farm players are going to be. We don't know if Salas is going to be good. We don't know if DeVries is going to be good. They're too young. It's not about that. It's one, that this is the same thing the Padres have been doing for years, trading top-level prospects for top-level talent, and then what happens? They lack depth, or at least they lack depth more than some other contenders. And then you run into an issue where it's like, hey, you know why the Padres need a starting pitcher right now? Because they don't have a lot of good depth in the farm that they can call up. They've tried, right? They're trying to make Randy Vasquez a thing. They tried to make Johnny Brito a thing, although he's a little bit hurt right now. They tried to make Adam Mazur a thing, and look what's happened, right? So that's my thing. You want to keep assets, because who knows if someone else becomes available next year that is more of a glaring need. The team looks much better. Maybe the farm's better. Maybe you got better pitching. There's just a little bit too much uncertainty for you to go all in on this season. And to me, you would have to give up your Salas and DeVries in order to get this guy. That would not be outrageous for the Tigers to ask at all. And I bet you that's what they are asking about. I have not heard or seen any reports linking the Padres to him, but nonetheless, it's out there. The next one is Garrett Crochet, and he's a lot more difficult to talk about because he has the same thing where he's an elite level pitcher, right, of the White Sox, and unlike the Tigers, I do not think the White Sox are close at all, so it fully makes sense why Garrett Crochet is a top level target for a lot of teams. And also, the Padres literally were one of the first teams publicly reported to be interested in him. I'm imagining that there's plenty of others, but it was reported like more than like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago maybe, that the Padres were interested in this guy, and it fits. AJ loves his big stars. That's what he likes going for, so totally makes sense. But there's more to it. There's more to it, folks, and we got to talk about that, because this is, to me, why Garrett Crochet is just, and I don't think it's necessarily something that can't be changed, but I just think his situation is a lot more complicated, despite the fact that he has numbers that are very similar to your Tarik Skubal's, and he's on a worse team that should trade him, unlike the Tigers. I think there's more to it. I'm going to talk about that, and of course, going to talk more about the Padres, potential other trade targets, and some other players that have already left for the deadline. We're going to keep talking all things deadline. We are nerding out, but in just a second, guys. First, I need to talk to you about the lovely folks over at Supply House, folks. We love Supply House. You order supplies from the website there, Supply House, that's made for the skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. Need help with an order? Get industry-leading after sales service from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team and talk to a real person every time. No robots, no illusions, no AI, whatever. They got you covered, man. And there's great news for plumbers, technicians, and contractors. Being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join their free Trade Master program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trade Master program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing. We were just talking about one Sir Garrett Crochet. And here's the thing. This is a really complicated situation. So first of all, I want to just kind of reiterate what I said before, which is that I just do not think that the Padres should be giving up a lot of their prospects. I already thought that the haul for Jason Adam was pretty steep, right? And that's a 31 or 32-year-old reliever. I understand that he's very good, but you know my feelings on relievers. It will never, ever change. I don't care who it is. They're very volatile unless you get yourself Hall of Fame type players like your Mariano Rivera's, like your Trevor Hoffmans, like your, heck, even to a degree, your Francisco Rodriguez, your Jonathan Papelbons of a certain era that people might remember. So to me, I just don't like giving up all that much. So if that's what it costs to take a reliever, and by the way, over at Fangraphs, there's actually a reliever talking about this, an article talking about this. You get a reliever and you get a reliever, and it's by Ben Clemens. It's a really good look into a lot of the action that's occurred over these last 48, 64, whatever hours. And I think that it's a really fun read to keep you informed, I guess. But anyway, back to Garrett Crochet. The prospect haul that the Padres would have to send, remember, it is not about me necessarily thinking that Ethan Salas and Leody DeVries are the next Johnny Bench and the next Trey Turner or whatever, right? Or the next Francisco Lindor, whatever position player you want to talk about. It's just that you are losing more assets and you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So if anything is to arise, and by the way, what if Garrett Crochet or Tarik Skubal all of a sudden, I'm not saying this will happen, I don't think it's likely, but what if they get hurt? What if they get less good, right? Remember when they traded for Darvish and Snell? Those guys took a little bit of time, especially the latter, to get very, very effective on this team. There have been players out there that have been traded that haven't really pulled through on their end of the bargain, and some signings too. So to me, you're adding another unstable element, and you're just asking everything to work right. And don't get me wrong, I love having Tarik Skubal if this team makes the playoffs. That's the other thing. If this team makes the playoffs, there's no guarantee. And again, I just want to have some extra things to bank on. Give the farm system a little bit of time to reload. You already gave up Let's Go. That's a lot, right? Now, with Garrett Crochet, here's the problem with Garrett Crochet. For those who are unfamiliar with the story, I was mostly pretty unfamiliar with it too, because I didn't realize that it would get to this point. I think is a really important aspect of this. Basically, him and his, agency and everybody, they firmly have stated that he won't throw in the postseason unless he gets an extension. And they're strongly against him moving to the bullpen. So that's the whole thing. And that's why we're having trouble right now with Garrett Crochet, and why you've been getting some reports that a trade seems like it might be unlikely. Although we have heard rumors that it's been picking up a little bit. I think I heard the Braves. I think I heard the Dodgers as other teams interested in him. And that's the problem. Why would you trade for a guy that in the biggest games of, his career too, and for the team's season, that he doesn't want to pitch in them? I'm not hating on Garrett Crochet at all. I think he's using leverage. I have no problem with this. This is a league, guys. And I'm not, and by the way, the Padres are immune from this. They are one of the teams that cannot say, hey, we aren't cheap. We're doing our thing. This is a league that is currently letting a Major League Baseball team just become and relegate itself, right? Moving to like a AAA ball club, refusing to spend, all that stuff. So imagine, why am I going to be against a player who's like, if I have leverage, if there are rumblings that I may be able to get an extension, then why not use that as leverage and be like, then fine, I'm not pitching for you. Even if you trade for me, I want my extension. Once you give me my extension and guaranteed money, then I'm going out there. And also, Garrett Crochet, kind of like approaching his career high in innings. So maybe that's why he's considering this. I don't want to throw more innings than I'm used to and then risk getting hurt and then I get nothing. So I'm not against Garrett Crochet. But even if, let's pretend for a second that the Padres are like, no problem, you would not only have to give up a big prospect haul for this guy that I think personally, because of the years of control especially, and the youth and all that, you'd probably have to give up, rightfully, a DeVries or a Salas, maybe both. That wouldn't shock me either. And then you have to extend him. I don't have a problem with the extension. However, what have I been telling you guys for all year? We need to stop putting this team and handcuffing itself, that they're so committed to so many players that you have no move, no maneuverability, right? You want to have some positions that you can move around. By the way, another trade just went down as I'm recording this. Frankie Montas going to the Milwaukee Brewers. That's interesting because the Brewers were also interested, reportedly, in Jack Flaherty, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. So does this signal that they might be out of that sweepstakes? Maybe. But anyway, so Garrett Crochet for me, it's a no, not because of the whole extension thing. I would have no problem with that. But then it's like, once again, how many guys do we have extended on a core and a team overall that hasn't shown that they're the Atlanta Braves and they're a lock to be a playoff contender and World Series contender every year? I just wouldn't do it. Next part of this podcast, guys, we got to talk about all the other arms, because right now, as far as I'm concerned, the thing that the Padres need is a starter. And I don't think that they need a top line starter. I really don't. I don't think you need a Tarik Skubal or a, or a Garrett Crochet. I think that this team can have your Waldron, your Cease, your Michael King, and then you can have the hope that one of Darvish or Musgrove comes back, and then you get a fifth guy. And if you look at it from that perspective, that does not mean you need an ace, right? That's not what this team needs, okay? That's why I think that the Padres are actually in a decent position. Even though they really need a starting pitcher badly, I just think that with the ascension of Michael King and Matt Waldron and Cease pitching how he's been pitching lately especially, I don't think that they need to go anywhere crazy. But even the not crazy options have been flying off the wall. Michael Lorenzen, he's gone. Yusei Kikuchi, someone I talked about on this show, he's gone. He got traded to the Astros. Whether or not he'll be good for them, I'm not totally sure. That team has been a little bit weird. And Kikuchi's a little bit weird. I like his stuff. I think he could get some strikeouts sometimes, but he's also a little bit weird. He's not a guarantee. He's gone. Eric Feed. That's a player I've been talking about for a long time too, and I think it's interesting that he was traded before Garrett Crochet was traded. Same team, the White Sox. And by the way, he's been really good. 3.11 ERA, not as good as Crochet, obviously. 3.76 FIP, not nearly as many strikeouts, but he's okay, and he's on a pretty good contract after spending some time, I believe it was in the KBO, similar to our old friend Nick Martinez, right? I think that this guy has figured out a little bit of something. 2 years, $15 million, that would be pretty great. That was an option, and he's gone. Unfortunately, he is heading to, I believe the Cardinals is who he just got traded to. Let me just make sure. Yes, he's heading to the Cardinals. Zach Eflin was another pitcher that I talked about. He's been traded, unfortunately, and I'm forgetting where Zach Eflin got traded to. This is nuts. Let me actually pull up my free agency guide and whatnot. Eflin got traded to the Orioles. That's right. Interesting. So could Zach Little, he's another Zach, obviously, from the Rays, that could also be interesting. I don't know if he's going to be all that exciting for a lot of Padres fans, but what I'm basically trying to illustrate is there's been a lot of the middle tier starters flying around, and I don't know exactly how many guys are available for the Padres necessarily, but I do think that you can find some that can fit their role, and their role, in my opinion, given Michael King, given Dylan Cease, given Matt Waldron, given that we can maybe count on Musgrove or Darvish coming back, I don't think they need some superstar ace that you have under control for years and then you're super excited about all that stuff. I don't think you necessarily need that. Zach Little, though, keep that name on your radar. I only say that, by the way, it could be like not a Padres one. Could totally not be a Padres related one, but I just say keep that one on your radar, because I think that same thing with Jason Adam. There's plenty of guys that are being talked about right now that maybe aren't being reported nearly as much. So he's gone, right? But that still leaves plenty of interesting options for the Padres, and I think that there's one especially interesting one, and that is Jack Flaherty. Now you might be wondering, but Javi, that guy's been pitching like an ace this year too. You would be right, my friends. That would be right. Jack Flaherty is also a guy with like a fringe Cy Young vibe to him. And he's been kind of surprising in a lot of ways. This is a guy with a 30% strikeout rate, only a 4.7% walk rate, 2.35 ERA, and no, he's not getting lucky. xFIP 2.77, FIP 2.57, expected ERA heck, is even down. This guy has been, oh, my bad, by the way. I was reading for Skubal. But still, Jack Flaherty, 2.95 ERA. He's got a 32% strikeout rate, so actually better than Skubal. FIP at 3.10, xFIP at 2.56, so not quite as dominant as a Tarik Skubal, but very good. And you might be wondering, well, that must cost a lot. He's just as good. He's a free agent after this year. So to me, and by the way, if the Padres need to, right, they can go out and they can be like, oh, we don't have to sign and extend this guy after the season. Instead, you can head into negotiations and be like, we're okay either way, because we'll also have a Robbie Snelling available. There are also going to be other starting pitchers available. Maybe even a Blake Snell opts out of his deal and he becomes available. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. And to me, that makes him a prime target because he's a rental. And because he's a rental, the Padres don't have to give up nearly as much. This is corroborated by some reports that the Padres are talking to Jack Flaherty. And I really like that another team that was talking to him, the Milwaukee Brewers, that they went and they got Frankie Montas, who, by the way, was another option potentially if the Padres wanted to go for it. That would have been interesting. I don't see a way, as I sit to you, Fireside Chats, July 30th, my birthday, by the way, I don't see a world in which the Padres don't leave with some starter. You know, the Denzel Washington video, I'm leaving here with something. I think that they got to get a starting pitcher. And with the Brewers not getting him, despite the reports from before, and they go for Montas instead, maybe that means they're going to go out and they're going to get Jack Flaherty tomorrow. And if that happens, Flaherty, yes, it's only for the rest of the season, but remember that the Padres have a top pitching prospect available that could get called up next year. Remember that there's a deep free agent class, or a deeper free agent class, I should say, including the aforementioned Frankie Montas. And then also remember that Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove are still guys under contract for next year. And then also Dylan Cease, Michael King, they're available. Maybe you extend them. There's some options there. So there's some hope that you can get a decent starting pitching rotation for you going forward. You don't have to go all in. Even if you were to lose Flaherty next year, how does it sound if the Padres rest of the year, they get one of Musgrove or Darvish come back? Hopefully they're pretty effective. I think Darvish, as long as he's healthy, will be great. Musgrove's question will be if he's healthy. You have that. Jack Flaherty, Dylan Cease, Matt Waldron, Michael King. Whew. I mean, the three punch of Michael King's, let's say for a playoff series, it would probably go Dylan Cease, Michael King, Jack Flaherty. That's some big time arms, and that's the type of trio that teams win World Series with. So if you want to go for it, but not hamstring yourself likely for the future, and by the way, there were reports that Michael Lorenzen, that's the type of package that you might get if you were to trade Jack Flaherty because he's just a rental. That ain't all that much. If people want to look that up, by the way, let me just type in what was given up for Lorenzen. The Royals gave up for Lorenzen left-handed pitcher Walter Pennington, who made his MLB debut on July 5th and pitched 2/3 of an inning and allowed no base runners in 37. Oh, he's actually been pretty good with them. But whatever. You guys get my point. I just don't think, and by the way, I would have heard about Walter Pennington more if he was a high-level prospect. That's not too much of a return, man. I shouldn't have read it because it was going to make it sound like he was better than he actually is. But to me, I just think Flaherty's the way to go. I really do. I do not think you have to go Crochet. I don't think that means they won't. Skubal, I don't think they will. I just don't think Skubal's real. I think that's them throwing the fishing rod into the ocean and just seeing if they happen to get, Godzilla to nibble on it, right? That's what I think is what's happening here. That was a weird analogy. But nonetheless, there's still more to talk about, guys, with this deadline and much more, including a listener question that I want to talk about. Folks, from a very kind man who messaged me yesterday. And remember, you can always message me if you want your comments or questions read on the show, especially for the Monday mailbag at Javiipeno, Javiipeno. But folks, I got to take a little bit of a break. Whew. I've been talking a lot. Let's talk to you guys real quick about the good folks over at Prize Picks. Here's the thing, folks. Daily fantasy folks, they know Prize Picks is the number one place to go, man. It is the number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player sat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000, folks. I mean, come on, does that not sound like a deal or what? So go check it out. And with Prize Picks, you can turn all that $10 amounts that you have into thousands while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup consisting of players across basketball. You want to have LeBron? No problem. You want to have LeBron, and then you want to have have Diana Taurasi and Kelsey Plum in one corner, or in Chelsea Gray, all of them, you want to do that? No problem. Soccer, tennis, golf, and many more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick on those player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Folks, it's really fantastic over there. And they've got little things to help you out. On Tuesdays, so today, they help you lower stat projections to help your lineup better hit. On Fridays, you can get your money back, or I should say your entry fees back, if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. That's just a couple examples, folks. So go check out Prize Picks, man. It's great. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And just like that, folks, we are back here thriving and certainly vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast. Fireside Chat number 5. I've been doing this for 5 years. Is that crazy? This is my 5th time I've been doing this. Look, the vibes are great. And what's funny about the Fireside Chat is whenever I record them, it's always this uneasiness. And I'm recording this one pretty early. It's currently 9 o'clock for me Eastern time. It's just funny because I worry, I hope that this drops, and I hope that if Preller does make a trade, make it at 4 in the morning. That way, I wake up and do an episode immediately, rather than having to scrap this one that I spent time on, right? That would be annoying. But, I just think that with the deadline, the Padres need to be a lot more cautious. I'm not concerned. Concerned isn't the right word. It just says a lot how much they had to give up for Jason Adam. And I understand the user control. I get it. It just says a lot, though. I feel like the reliever market has been really out of control. And I'm like, do y'all not remember that relievers are really strange? You know what I mean? All of a sudden, by the way, it wouldn't shock me if Yuki Matsui is awesome for the rest of the season. Or, Wandy Peralta's been pretty bad. But you get my point. I just feel like guys can go on a hot stretch in the bullpen more than any other position. They pitch an inning, for God's sake. Kind of explains it. All in all, though, I really do think that Jack Flaherty is the last awesome option. I still think that if the Padres make a trade, they can go and just get some guy who's you know what, we can trust him to throw innings. That's what we need right now. We need a little bit more stability. We can't have a Randy Vasquez or an Adam Mazur combo. Now, I will say, if the Padres don't trade, let's just talk about that for a second. If the Padres don't get a big-time starter, and frankly, even if they were to get a Jack Flaherty because he would be a rental, that says a lot about how the team says about its pitching options going forward. And you should keep an eye on that. If the Padres don't acquire a starting pitcher today, I keep saying tomorrow. I'm sorry. I'm recording the night before. If the Padres don't acquire another starting pitcher, that immediately tells me one of two things. Number one, that the Padres are ridiculous and that they're taking way too much of a risk, that they're just not going to have much of a rotation the rest of the year, and that the offense is going to carry them and blah, 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 blah. Number two is that it would tell me, oh, okay, maybe Musgrove and Darvish are close to returning. Maybe they feel really good about a Robbie Snelling going forward. Maybe they really feel good about potentially extending a Dylan Cease or Michael King. So you're going to learn something big about the Padres' future today, one way or another, right? That's really exciting. And by the way, I know some people might be wondering about bats. For me, if the Padres were to go out and get a bat, Taylor Ward, someone that will cost you basically nothing and be an average offensive outfielder, while Tatis is gone, is what my dream would be. So Taylor Ward is one of those. I think he actually has a little bit of upside, by the way, so I'd be really interested in that one. And I think he could play right field. That's also something to look out for. But I will say offense hasn't been this team's number one issue, so it wouldn't shock me if the Padres don't necessarily address that. But either way, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at your Taylor Ward types. I'm looking at, heck, he was traded the other day, but your Austin Hayes types, just a decent outfielder that you think is average. That way it's not quite as much of a black hole it's felt like with your David Peraltas, who I know he's had a couple good moments, but your David Peraltas and your Bryce Johnsons. That's what you don't want. But I think priority number one is going to be starting pitching. It's tough. It's tough, but I think one way or another, we're going to find something out about the Padres, man, and we'll see. And I know that another counter people will have is, well, we always retool the farm system. I know, but it's still going to take time. You know what I mean? And I don't want a lame duck AJ Preller, if he's about to get fired, I don't want him deciding the future of the team. Because what if he's I don't care. If they told me Ethan Salas is going to be the next, Buster Posey, oh, well, I don't care. I might get fired, so I might as well just trade him to keep my job. So be careful of that. We're going to learn a lot, and I can't wait. And also, very weird that the deadline's at 6 p.m., by the way, Eastern time at least. I'm not used to that. Am I crazy? I've been doing these fireside chats of the day of the deadline or the day before the deadline for a while. I don't remember them being that much later. I'm used to them being at like 2 or 3 o'clock. Maybe I'm dead wrong. I don't know. Last thing I wanted to do, guys, is answer a question from a listener. Remember, you can do that all the time. It is a lovely thing to do because I love hearing from you guys. This one coming by way of Twitter at B-Lance. No, B-Vance. My bad. I read that as the, I got scared for a second. I read that as the vice president candidate of the Republican Party. I got really confused for a second. I was like, wait, J.D. Vance is asking me a question on Locked On Padres? That would have been weird. Anyway, hey, I first just wanted to thank you for helping me get into baseball this year. Lacrosse player my whole life, in parentheses. Shouts to you, sir. You're a lax, bro. I appreciate that. I have learned a ton from the podcast that I now can't live without, LOL, and I can relate as an East Coast fan as well. Thank you, sir. And no, I didn't pay him to say this about the learning the time for the podcast to be on the East Coast. I was wondering if you could explain the strategy of a bullpen game. I felt like Mazur was pitching decent and deserved more time. Would this not just be hurting the confidence even more of a player that could be a starting pitcher in the future? I could be completely off base, but I'm curious as to why he got pulled so early. I also may be a little biased as I just really like to root for him. I feel like he could turn it around. I'm not sure if the stats back that up, though. Also, Profar is the best story in baseball. Thank you again for all you do for us fans. First of all, you're very welcome. And thank you. You don't have to thank me. Thank you for listening to the show. I appreciate that very much. So first of all, no, him saying Profar, learning a ton for the podcast, East Coast fan, I promise you, this isn't just one of my friends or anyone like my parents that I paid to send me a question or anything like that. So to talk about Adam Mazur first, I think that, first of all, yes, the numbers on him aren't been good. I've joked a lot on this podcast that Mazur has, I'm pretty sure, quite literally not ever gone like an outing with getting more strikeouts than walks. That just hasn't been something that he's done. So that's really unfortunate, and it gets me really frustrated. But I understand what you're saying. In Friday's game, Adam Mazur only went 2 2/3. He gave up 1 earned run on 2 hits. I don't think he looked that electric. And also, I think it's worth pointing out that Mazur has a 7.49 ERA. Like, he's been really bad this year. And I get why they want to go full bullpen game. I think what they're thinking was, in my opinion, with the trade deadline coming up, there's probably going to be some new faces. And also, Mazur is going to get sent down, which he was right after the game, so we can bring up somebody else. I think it was just one of those spot start situations. I understand what you're saying, though, that taking him out that early when he didn't look like he was getting that killed. But they've seen this before. He tends to unravel in certain games. And I think the Padres are, look, we're going to have some new faces at the deadline, new fresh faces for this team that'll be recharged, ready to go. And then also, on Monday, we have a day off. So if we did overuse the bullpen, we have a little bit of extra time to be able to get that back. But I totally get what you're saying, especially since he started off not all that horribly. And then they bring Austin Davis, and he immediately is like not all that great, right? So he kind of throws the ball away. That wasn't great. But all in all, I think it's a totally fair question, dude. I think that this team has shown many times that they can be a little bit weird with the way that they deploy some of their starting pitchers, and frankly, how they just operate with their starting pitchers. I'm talking about when they're as prospects. I'm talking about with how cagey they can be about their health. That's what I mean. In terms of a bullpen game, you're basically just trying to save your starters because this team is desperate for starters right now. Look, they headed into the series being like, we know that we have to have a Randy Vasquez and an Adam Mazur start, and it's against one of the best teams in baseball. Now, obviously, the offense super performed amazing and completely carried the pitching on Friday, but you saw what happened Sunday. It just can get really out of their way. So, in my opinion, I don't think that there's any like for sure hardcore reason. I think they're like, look, we do have to monitor some things because we're heading into this trade deadline. We got to monitor Michael King's innings, frankly, and that has nothing to do with Mazur. I'm just saying in general, there's a lot of different things to monitor, and they know these pitchers a lot better than we do. And I think that you saw very clearly him getting sent back down, that they just wanted him up for a little bit, see what happens, I guess. And maybe, frankly, not have him go too long, because every time he's gone longer, he's given up more runs. So maybe it's a little bit of a reverse thing with the confidence where they're like, you know what? Let's take him out before he messes up. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what they were thinking. I don't know. But I think this is a great question. Let me know, guys, what you think. If there was anything I'm missing, because I almost, when Vance first asked this question, I was wondering, like, yeah, why did they do that? I had the audio off, so I didn't hear anything. As you guys know, for the broadcast, I sometimes don't listen to them. Not great. I know. I got to work on that. But, other work to do every now and then. But, yeah, so I don't think so. But I'm glad that you were rooting for him, Vance, and I think that this is going to be a potential player to keep an eye on as well. Maybe they took him out early because they're like, maybe we might use him in the trade deadline. I don't know. Maybe my tinfoil hat or my tinfoil hood is on a little bit too tight for me to say that, but I don't know. We'll have to see, guys. This has been the 5th ever edition of the Fireside Chats Locked On Padres podcast. I got to work on the naming of that. The 5th ever Fireside Chat episode of the Locked On Padres podcast. That's what I need to say. It's weird, though, to jumble all those words together. Send me all your questions, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know, because today is my birthday, full disclosure, so I don't know if I'm going to be out necessarily for the deadline, like up to the date. We will be posting a live reaction to whatever moves do come out. If the Padres do make that trade for Jack Flaherty, whatever it is, I will give like an instant video reaction on the YouTube Shorts that you can look forward to. I'll for sure be tweeting about it. Don't know if I'm going to be able to go live though, but if I do, it would be at 5 o'clock. So check out the YouTube channel around then. If you see a live monitor, follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. I will post that at L_Padres as well. I will post updates if we are going live, because I'd love to not only just frankly rehash some of these things, talk more about my opinions on the trade deadline assets that are flying off the board right now, and then obviously live react if something is to happen that's really crazy. Because man, let me tell you, if I was live when that Juan Soto trade went down years ago, I would have been on the news. You know what I mean? Like, I might have gotten fired from Locked On. That's how crazy my reactions might have been. I'm so serious right now too. When I was at work and I was not listening to a single thing that people were telling me on my conference call. I heard some things. I took some notes, but I had to like DM and ask again. And I was like, bro, I was just like staring at my phone in disbelief. So whatever happens, guys, it's going to be fun. Have faith in the Padres. Have faith in AJ Preller. He usually does actually pretty okay at the trade deadline, in my opinion. The Adam Mazur year was different. Not the Adam Frazier year was different. That was him being like, I just couldn't match what they had. And yeah, that's another thing. If the Padres don't do anything, just hope that other teams don't do anything crazy. I.e., hope that the Diamondbacks don't get everybody. Hope that the Dodgers don't get everybody. Actually, the Dodgers getting everybody wouldn't be nearly as bad. It would be the wild card teams. Keep an eye out for that. Hopefully other teams don't go crazy. But again, we're just going to have to see. But until that very next time, guys, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care. AJ Preller, we're praying at your shrine tonight. Do us proud. See you next time, everybody.